Hello, everybody. Ali Duzette here with my homegirl, Naomi Fox Reyna. She's another astrologer, and I'm crazy about her. And so yesterday, Mercury went retrograde at 4 degrees of Gemini, which happens to be the same degree as my natal Jupiter. And it is conjunct my solar return ascendant for this year. So it was like the perfect day for my new book, 30 Days of Belief Work Sleep, to become a bestseller. Thank you to everybody that helped make that happen. So I was talking to, I showed Naomi the chart of this, and actually I took a screenshot because I was like, this is out of control. Like, oh my gosh, can we believe it? Let me go share it. So cool. Hello, screenshot. This is a triple chart. I know your brain's just exploded, but this is what we're talking about. This was yesterday, this purple fellow at 4 degrees of Gemini and 50 minutes. And then that's my birth Jupiter at 4 degrees and 50 minutes of Gemini. It was exact to the minute that you guys helped my book just go crazy. And then that's my ascendant for the year, which every year on your birthday, when the sun goes back to, for me, 4 degrees and 12 minutes of Virgo, when the sun goes back to that spot, then the chart from that moment, wherever you are, is kind of like the flavor of your year. And so the flavor of my year was going to be 7 degrees of Gemini. And my North Node for the year is 6 degrees of Gemini, which is right conjunct all of that. It's so cool. You just can't make this stuff up. It's so real. Oh my gosh. But the important thing is that Naomi said, Ali, how are you going to celebrate? And I thought, wait, what? Who celebrates things? Like, I don't, I just work all the time.
Yep.
And
Like
so,
lots of people do.
yeah, well, so, okay, so let's pass the baton to you. And I want to hear about, I want you to explain to everybody about the timeline.
Okay, so as we were having this conversation, I was like, what are you going to do to celebrate? And she's like, I don't know, like maybe get a sitter and go out to dinner tomorrow. And I'm like, you have to celebrate because it's not just like, oh, now I have an excuse to celebrate. So why let's back up and tell my story of how I came to see like I need to celebrate things. So years ago I ran my own branding and website design business, and I sold packages to do people's websites and brands anywhere from like $3,000 to like $39,000. And it was like, you know, the big kahuna one, right? And I knew I had lots of people in my space that wanted to do the big one, but they couldn't afford it. So I took 3 months and I transferred all of that information into a course that people could take themselves through. 3 months worth of work. I was a full time single mom. I had 3 little boys, like life, all the things. And I worked so hard. And then when I got it done, I was like, okay, well, now I have this huge to do list of all these things that didn't get done over the last 3 months because I invested all my time in this thing. And I went right back to work, like as though I were just like whipping myself from the back, like, come on, you got to work harder. You're so behind. And then hours later that night, I was like, wait a minute. I just did something huge. I accomplished something magnificent. Why did I not even pause for a moment to celebrate? So I text my girlfriend who had introduced me to astrology, and I was like, "Is this my Virgo moon?" And she was like, "Yes, that's totally your Virgo moon." And I was like, "Okay, like I love my Virgo moon. My Virgo moon is amazing." But my Virgo moon was like, "Now we have stuff to do." And so when Allie told me this, Allie being a Virgo, I was like, "Oh, it's totally your Virgo." Like Virgo works and doesn't stop to play, and I am a Sagittarius, and so it's like we need to celebrate. And I could see all of the sudden like how it all mattered, that if you don't celebrate the wins, it doesn't tell yourself on all the levels, like conscious, unconscious, like in your body, like in your emotions, in your heart, in like every part of you, and the timeline that something has shifted, that something is different. Because your timeline just goes and it like goes in loops, and I think we just keep looping until we accomplish things, or until we check off the box, or until like something significant has happened that then triggers a new timeline. And so if you are accomplishing things and you're not celebrating, it doesn't mark a spot in the timeline to let it know that now you can move forward and have a whole new thing. And as we were talking, I did this when in 2015 when I left my second husband. It was a violent marriage. It was absolutely terrible, all the layers of awful. And I was like, I have now married two men that were terrible for me. I need to do this differently. So I shaved my head. Like it was not a spark decision. It was like I thought about it for like 4 or 5 months before I did it. I talked with my therapist about it, like everything. Like I did this carefully, and what I wanted out of the experience was to declare that I would never be that woman that I was before. And after I did it, people were like, was it worth it? Did you get what you wanted? I was like, oh, I got so much more than what I bargained for. And it was totally worth it because it was like I took a staff and I just boom, like on the timeline. And I was like, forevermore, I will never, ever, ever be that woman that chooses into those types of relationships ever again. And I never, ever did again. And as my hair grew back, it was this very visceral experience of I'm on a new timeline and I've created something new. And my hair was as longer, about as long, a little longer than it is now when I made the decision to shave my head. So it was very dramatic and it grew back quite slowly. It took probably 5 years for my hair to reach the same length. So that's what sparked our conversation last night. And Allie was like, we have to talk about this and we need to tell people.
Everyone has to know. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, it just totally blew my mind because I work more with time than I talk about. And so I wanted to talk about that today because I think, I mean, obviously everybody, we all experience life in the context of this weird thing called time. And especially with my ADHD work, I am working on a time blindness session, which is not close to being done, but it is in the works. And this idea of timelines, right? Because I work with past trauma, especially even like pre-earth trauma that we all come here with. And then wouldn't it be great if you could go back in time and undo things, right? Like, wouldn't it be great if you could go forward in time and lay the pavement for smoother sailing in your own future? Right? So this is the kind of stuff that I've been working on for several years. And I just think it's so interesting, but I never talk about it. So I want to talk really quickly about the nature of time, because time is kind of just an illusion, but not totally, right? So if you can move faster than light, you can kind of move faster than time. And if you, like, we look up at the stars, so we're astrologers, we look up at the stars, and the light that you see doesn't exist now. It's old, right? So like the moon is, when we look up and see the moon, we saw it as it was 1.5 minutes ago. But when we look at like some of these stars and like Orion and these different constellations, we're seeing them as they were a couple million years ago, a couple billion years ago. When you look at the sky, you're seeing a time capsule. This is not now. This happened millions of years ago. And now we are beholding it with our eyes because of how light works and how time works, right? And so if you can move faster than light, you can kind of move faster than time. And that's kind of the premise of that movie, Paycheck, which if you have you seen Paycheck?
Yes, I have.
Oh, it's one of my favorite movies. I have loved that movie.
It's been a long time. I'm totally gonna have to pull that up again.
I know it was my favorite movie for years and years, and now I haven't watched it in probably like 6 years or something, but it was my favorite movie of all. So I'll have to go rewatch it too. But that's the premise of this movie, is basically this time travel. When you can go faster than light, you can go faster than time. And on a religious level, we know that God is eternal and we exist in this, sphere of time, and things like the Doctrine and Covenants have a lot to say about time and how like time is for here, eternity is really outside of time. And that's how a lot of healing takes place, is that we're accessing the parts of ourselves that are already healed, because your perfect self already exists out there outside of time, but your physical body is currently existing within the construct of time. Right. And so man, now I just lost my train of thought. Any thoughts from you really quick?
Well, my best friend calls me the queen of timing because I have a ton of timing gifts and I will bend time and I will move it around. And what's really interesting about you, Allie, with all of your research with time is you are a manifesting generator on the human design system. And Karen Curry Parker has like renamed the different types and I think that they're more in alignment. And she calls the manifesting generator the time bender.
Oh, I will have to go check this out. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Oh, so that reminds me of what we were actually talking about, which is this celebration and this timeline. Yes. Because as you said that about marking the timeline, I suddenly had this vision of everybody's timeline. And so this is what I work with when I do a personal session I can see that timeline and kind of like these spaces where like something terrible has happened. But sometimes, something so terrible happens that it separates from the timeline entirely. And that's when you have something that's beyond space and time. If you have a thing that you keep working on and it never clears, a lot of times it's because it's not in your timeline. It's just beyond, because it was so traumatic, it ripped itself off from the timeline. You have to call it back into space and time, call it back into space and time, call it back into the present, and then use the skills that you have now to release it and then grow up whatever part of you was trapped in the past to the present. Make sure it knows all of your life lessons and like make sure that it has grown up. When people do this and they don't grow it up and heal it up at the end, then they just end up with all the same trauma from before that just never healed up,
Yes, I completely agree.
Yes. And I have a whole big class about this called Healing Psyche Fragmentation in allyduzetclasses.com. So that's like where to get all the information about that. But about psyche fragmentation anyway, but the same principles apply for time looping. And so what you were saying about how we just keep on doing the same things in these loops until we put a final ending on the timeline, that's when I thought, oh my gosh, how much stuff from my past is still going because I never put down that ending. And so what kind of endings do we have? Probably like, I love your example of shaving your hair. And when I saw you this morning, I was like, oh my gosh, you look amazing. I was just thinking of your beautiful hair. I mean, like, and your whole beautiful self, but like, it's like your hair is incredible. And especially today, but like imagining, I mean, actually, I became friends with you on Facebook right before you shaved your head, I think, because I think I remember seeing that happen. One second, my cat's gonna toss the piano. Ooh, crisis averted. But like that's a big timeline shift. I mean, I think we can all look back at our own timelines and immediately pick out like my brother died in 2013. Like that's a timeline.
Death is a very powerful one because so many things change. Because the person is no longer there. There's a funeral, which is a huge, huge thing. Ooh, how many times have people missed funerals for whatever reason and they deeply regret it? And it's like they can't quite move on because it's a very clear cultural, but also like energetic marker of finality, of closing the loop. And so, like, celebration has a similar energy and power to a funeral. And when you bring that level of like, boom, this is done, like, with my hair is glorious. I love my hair. This is my natural color. Like it's like my superpower, right? Like, and so I needed to know who I was without my hair. And the only way I could know that was to shave my head. And it was this like secret hope, desire, wish that I had. But I was like, I could never do that until like my whole life shattered. And I was like, okay, this is how I am taking control. This is something I am doing and opting into. And so those powerful things, like, you threw out some ideas this morning on social media, like, okay, what should I do to celebrate? And people were like, get a massage, go to dinner, all the things. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome. But it needs to feel, especially because you're a feeler, because you have your defined emotional center in human design, it needs to feel to you like it reaches all the layers. Because if it's just like, I don't know, we went to dinner like we do every week, like that's not a celebration. That's just like, oh, that was a nice week. But that's just part of the loop of like the repeating of our lives. So if you don't do something that feels, it could be something that somebody else is like, that's not a big deal. Like, go look for rocks outside. Like maybe to you that is like, this is so powerful. And to somebody else, it's not.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've been sitting here, I don't celebrate things. And so I don't even like birthdays. Like I don't like birthday cake. I don't like candles. I don't like a birthday song. I'm like, uh-oh, how do we celebrate? I'm going to scribble on this later. If you guys also have trouble celebrating, go scribble on your resistance to celebration, because that is my homework today. So I can go and celebrate. But when you said that, it has to feel like a celebration. I had this like flashback to a moment years ago where I had this overgrown garden and I really needed to fix it, but the only time I had available was like Sunday mornings. But I have to keep the Sabbath day holy. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, how can I garden on the Sabbath? It's work. And like, you're not supposed to work on Sunday. And I felt like God was like, gardening is only work if you think it's work. Like, what is more holy than communing with God while you're working with plants and like the earth that he created for you? And it was this moment of like, guess what? You're keeping the Sabbath day holy. Like keeping the Sabbath day holy is a heart thing. Like you can garden all day and keep the Sabbath day holy if your heart is,
Yeah,
in the right place.
absolutely. I frequently clean my house on the Sabbath because I came to the same conclusion. Because cleaning is zen, because I have a Virgo moon, and your moon is like what you point to for your self care. Like, I love getting stuff done. And since I don't work on Sundays, like, choose to rest that way. Often I will be like, oh, yes, now I can do this thing. And it feels good to me. It feels replenishing. It feels restful when it feels restful. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's the experience that you're having. Like, I loved when you were talking about the stars and how like they're, thousands, millions, billions of like in the past is what we're witnessing now. It's just the experience that we're having. So much of life is just the experience that we're having. And I've taught my children, like, other people are having a different experience than you, and that's really powerful to realize. Like, I'm having this experience. Like, two people could be sitting at like a football game, and one of them is like, this is the best thing ever, and the other one's like, kill me now, this is awful. It's just the experience that we're having. And so, like, for you with celebrating, yeah, there's a good chance that the classic like bubble baths and chocolate cake and all of that is just not your jam. But identifying like what lights you up, what is like a, oh, I've always wanted to do that. Like, those are the things. Like, everybody has something that's like but it might be like, I want to go to this famous library and like spend time there. Like, whatever it is, if it lights you up, if it's like a, oh, could I really, like, that would be amazing. That could, like, you would know that like you did this thing. And then every time you think back about the day that you became a #1 bestseller, it's also tied to this powerful experience of deliberate celebration where you feel it. Like, every year as we go around the sun, we usually have a birthday party. There's some kind of celebration, and that's not for everyone. Like you said, you're like, man, I'm good.
Yeah.
But it marks it. It, like, we mark things, and it matters. It really, really matters.
Wow. So as you were saying all of that, um, so one thing that I wanted to just like talk it out, but I wanted everybody to know that we were thinking about it and get it on everyone else's radar too. Like I said, I was looking back at my life and how I'm just kind of like a workaholic sort of person. I have Saturn in the 6th house. So I'm just
Midheaven
like,
in Virgo and Vesta in
yeah,
Virgo and my moon. Yes, I love work. I
yes,
love
yes,
it.
yes. I have tons of Virgo placements. And then my 6th house has like all these big planets in there. And I'm just like, I just work all day. I love it. That's all I want to do. Um, but I looked back at my life and I thought, I haven't celebrated my birthdays. I don't celebrate anything for myself, especially. Like, we just had birthday palooza this past weekend, and we had cake and we had stuff and presents
On Mother's
and
Day.
and it was Mother's Day. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I just looked back at my life and thought, okay, well, I need to go put in some celebration endings. I need to put in these markers on my timeline. And I think everybody watching could really benefit from this. And so I want to mention timelines just really quick. One thing I wanted to mention today was medical timelines, which is a little counterintuitive for the energy, but it's all the same thing. That's one reason that I
Everything is energy.
realized, huh?
Everything is energy.
Everything is energy. But these medical timelines is how I realized that my children were damaged from the hokey pokeys that they got when they were babies. I didn't realize it at first until I went back through the calendar and I would write down, like, this is the day they went to the well check. And then this is the day that they suddenly had sudden onset food allergies. And this is the day that they suddenly had like terrible eczema. And seeing the timeline, I was like, oh, like now it's abundantly obvious. In the moment, it wasn't obvious because all of the days just kind of ran together. I kept a record, like I have a journal, I had a blog, so I could find the dates, but I didn't zoom out and look at it from above, right? And so I think every human should do a medical timeline where you mark down all of the big stressful events and all of your health events and like all of your doctor visits, and you put them on a piece of paper with the date, and then you can look back and see the patterns. And I think that is so helpful for all the humans. I think all the humans should do that. All the mommies should do that for all of their children. And that is one of the hugest gifts that you can give to your own physical body health. But on an energy level, we have the same kind of situation where we're all just kind of like going throughout our lives, feeling like a little bit spacey and confused. I do it too. I'm like, what is happening? Okay, I guess I'm like going to do my life today, but like, what is going on? And being able to sit back and like make a timeline of what has happened is helpful. But now seeing what you have said, like I feel like this is the missing piece of the puzzle for me, to put down those finite markers on the timeline where it's like, yes, I was this caregiver for my brother and then he died. And now it's over, like for real, because he did die and it did feel over, but I was still, in that spacey place for a while. And
Well, the
like,
pending event was so perpetuated in that, like,
true.
it wasn't like he almost died a couple of times, and but like you spent what, like 10 years plus in that, like any minute, any minute, any minute
Yes,
energy, and
that's
like you altered your whole life to kind of orbit around him, and maybe not even altered, it's almost like your entire life was that way, but
yeah.
especially like the last 10 years of his life or so, like it was very hyper gravitational.
Wow, I love all of those star words that you used for that. It's so true. ah, yes. Um, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, and now I'm looking back and wondering if I ever put like a final energetic marker on like, I mean, I think when you have a big ending like that, did you kind of feel in a daze when you shaved your head? Like those a couple days afterwards as you were kind of adjusting to like,
it
oh, this is
was
new.
it was really dramatic, but like something like shaving your head, like it wasn't just a moment, because every time I looked in the mirror,
Ooh,
every time,
and
like, so it was this perpetual like reminder where like I look at the energy of stuff with your brother, and it's like, yeah, the door is still cracked for some reason, like you left it open just in case you need to harness that energy again, and it's like, whoa, that sounds exhausting.
yeah, I need to close the door all the way.
Yeah, but it's like you gotta, it's not just a matter of like boop, because like you left it open for a reason, where like shaving your head is very definite. It's not like final in the way that like you can never go back because your hair grows, but it's new hair that grows. But like it wasn't like I did something super permanent, but I also did something super permanent.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm wondering if there's like some kind of energetic procedure that, I mean, I know that there can be, there must be an option where like maybe like a journaling thing or like actually like drawing out the timeline, even if you don't have everything marked on it, but like drawing a timeline and just saying like, this is where I closed the door. Like this is formally where my abuse ended. It ended on that day. And like,
Yeah.
there's a little like line
Oh
that's
yeah.
slicing off that part of the timeline. It's over. And just like tapping it in, like that part of my timeline is done. And now we're pulling all of the parts that out of there and healing them and bringing them into the next part of the timeline. I think I'm going to experiment with this on
Yeah.
myself and then I'll probably have to tell everybody about it.
Do a class and all the things. Yeah, when we were chatting last night, like because I have experienced domestic violence, and that is something that has been part of my mortal timeline. That does things to our emotions and energy body and all of it. And there were multiple times that I deliberately would go into my timeline and I would like mark it like I am safe. Like in this moment, I am safe. And like I had to do it because it was so multi layered with it. Like it was like I was hitting different timelines or different, I don't, there was much to it, but like I would sometimes especially in the beginning just like lay there and just be like, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe, but knowing that I was marking something new. I wasn't just comforting myself in the moment, because I've always kind of had this awareness of timelines. Like when people tell me stories, I'm like, and then what happened, did this happen before or after that? Because I've always been the person that's like, let's put in the tiny little details of what happened and what when. And like it's so funny because certain people, they don't keep track of those details to save their life, and that's fine. I see it a lot with Aries energy, because Aries, they have like buckets for their timelines. Like they'll just be like, I don't know, like it happened like after I was 13 and before I was 22. Like I have no idea. Like they're they're so much more loose, than I'm married to a fabulous Aries. And so when I'll ask him questions, he won't remember. And I'm like, it's cool. Like that was just my curiosity, but it matters. Like sometimes even the minute to minute matters, because then this happened and then you made this decision and then this action happened. And it's like, it really, really matters, because timelines can be spliced out that minutely. And then other times, like you're saying, to go search the timeline, like I actually just go into a meditative state, is how I do it. And I just look and I just see with my third eye, like show me where, and it just like glows or it just shows up. And I'm able to kind of go in and just witness the timeline, witness what's going on there. And like when I got out of my second marriage, I was obsessed with like where should I have seen that this was going to go the way that it would? Like I was like obsessive,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
and I talked about it a lot with my therapist because I needed to feel that sense of control. Like I could interrupt it if it happened again. And it was this panic PTSD level. And so I searched and searched and searched the timeline. And I did. I came to the moment, the day, the exact moment where I stepped off of the timeline of keeping myself safe. And I joined him in the reality of, oh, you're actually right about stuff. And sometimes I'm wrong about stuff. So when the two collide, we always go with your decision. It was this split off. And I found the moment and I was able to go in and heal that. So I would never do that again because that no longer was part of my energy to say, oh, it's cool. I'll just put my safety aside and go with your plan. And it happened 5 weeks into dating. And that was the moment. But I couldn't see it until I searched and searched and searched. And then I found it. So like it can be powerful for healing abuse, but it can also be powerful for like, hey, that was really awesome, I want more of that. Like how, where is the moment where that awesome thing happened? Where did I make the decision to put me on this path to experience this? Because I want more joy, more love, more capacity to receive it.
Yes, I love that so much. I love that. Because our systems experience their experience, right? But then a lot of times they don't understand the experience. And so being able to look at the timeline and be like, this is the moment, like now focus on that moment and learn from this moment. That like once we use our agency to choose into learning from that exact time, that's when the learning like really takes place. Because if we don't do that, our brains are just like, oh,
Yeah,
and
you're
just like
just going through it.
keep
How
on
many people are
going.
just floating along in their lives and life is serving them up lessons and wisdom and they're just floating along because they're not engaging, they're not getting traction, often because they're still stuck in loops that aren't allowing them to be present.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Naomi. I know you have to go in like 1 minute. So everybody, Naomi has a great Facebook group. You changed the name of it. Say it.
Light-filled astrology and human design.
Yes.
So
Okay.
light filled,
Lightfield.
like filled with light. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lightfield Astrology and Human Design with Naomi Fox Arena. And she has a great website, Lightfield Astrology. That's where I always refer to people to get a free star chart made up. She doesn't read your chart for free, but you can go and like put in your information and it will generate you a free chart on her website. So then you can use that as a reference for all the cool stuff that we do here. And then, of course, like and subscribe and come hang out in my Facebook group, Intuitive Healing with Ali Duzette, if you want to. We'll love to hang out with you. Naomi's in there too. We have a great time. But
Absolutely.
thank you guys for being here, and we'll keep you updated on our future research with timelines. But
This was so fun. I love this
ah,
so much. You're amazing.
thank you, Naomi. Thanks for being here, and thank you guys for being here too. Bye.
Bye.